Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the Clive Barker Great and Secret Show graphic novel, adapted by Chris Ryall, illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez, and colored by Jay Photos. In case you don't know, there's a novel by Clive Barker called The Great and Secret Show, which is also really good. I haven't read this in probably a decade, so I don't, and I read this a couple months ago, so I don't know how much overlap there is explicitly between the two in terms of, or where the story exactly deviates. But they are very similar. They share the same characters, and for the most part, the story beats are the same. I think you'll find that Clive Barker's is probably a little more foul and raunchy in a way, but that's to be expected. So the graphic novel, I didn't even know that this existed for a long time. And then when I did find it, I didn't know it was in hardcover. And then when I saw a hardcover copy, I felt like I needed to get it. It was fairly expensive. I think, I can't remember if it was like 80, 90, 100 bucks. But it was actually kind of stressful getting it. It was delivered by a substitute mail carrier, except it wasn't delivered. It was misdelivered to somewhere. And the post office sort of refused to work with me on it and get me answers, so that I just wanted answers so I could kind of go around asking neighbors. I live in kind of a rural area, so like there's not that many places it could be delivered to, but they refused to really work with me on it. And then finally, either a citizen or the carrier left it by my mailbox, again, not inside of it. And it was raining out, sitting outside. Thankfully, the seller had wrapped it in plastic, so, no harm, no foul. But it honestly has shied me off from buying books lately because I just don't know. That was the second time I've had a comic book, a graphic novel, not put in my mailbox and outside in the rain. So I haven't really bought anything since. But let's get into this. So the story is fairly simple in terms of the broad sweeping gestures of it. Ironically, it starts at a post office in the lost letters department, where a guy named Randolph Jaffe sort of starts uncovering, while looking at these discarded mail, about this, I don't know, kind of secret world or power that's out there, basically, called quiddity. He's supposed to just look through the mail and see if there's cash and stuff in it that he'll split with the guys and whatnot. But like I said, he starts discovering the secret thing out there. And when I first read this, 2 pages in, and I was, having seen Gabriel Rodriguez's art, I was kind of blown away because it reminded me of really good cartooning. Because, like, look at this character here, our main character. He is not, his shoulder width is not 3 heads wide. His head height is not, it goes way below the chest, basically, which your head is supposed to go to about your chest. The proportions are strange, and they're done so intentionally, but they look really good. Also, something to take away from Gabriel Rodriguez is just his immaculate use of line weight. Very heavy lines here that really, I don't know, just, they're so good. Like, look at how thick the line work is on this. And I don't know, it's really good. It's probably, if I was to speculate, I think this was done with the brush maybe. And then the finer lines are kind of micron looking or something like that. But it really changed how I thought about my line weight in particular. And also encouraged me to be more playful in my proportions. Like, his characters in general are kind of squatty and not wide and big-handed. And I don't think the hands are big, actually. I think that they're normal size, where everything else is shrunk up. Like, look at that. Look at how tiny even these guys are. But I think it looks great. So, and his use of blacks here. I will show some pictures. I'll put my own drawings up of, like, I pretty much took this exact shape language here for a character in a drawing of mine. And I'm still trying to work on my comfortability with getting crazy line weights. But I think I also, seeing his work, have been more encouraged to go into playful expressions and bizarre proportions. So Jaffe, of course, this guy, he finds out about this secret thing and starts, of course, becoming evil. So he just kills the postmaster dude. And then he goes on this journey to figure out more about it. And I'm going to kind of flip through this pretty quickly. I don't want this to take too much of your time. And this is not going to be a comprehensive story breakdown. The basic gist of the story is a battle between good and evil that takes place over like 3 different decades. Jaffe being the evil, a guy named Fletcher, who Jaffe comes into contact with, being the good. This is not him. This is a sort of shaman dude he runs into, who also has some knowledge of this dream sea, which is a place that all of us in this world go to when we dream. And, for some it's nightmares, for some it's dreams. But it's kind of like a mix between heaven. But he finds Fletcher, who's more of a kind of a mad scientist, trying to figure out a way, through science to reach this place. And they agree to work together to figure it out. Of course, he doesn't inherently know that, Jaff is bad, Fletcher. But so they have their battle. They land in this place called Palomo Grove, kind of like 2 asteroids hitting down. And they get buried kind of deep beneath the earth, where they just wage war. And it presents itself as kind of a fault line type earthquake in California. Anywho, I'm going to skip over this part where they are skinny dipping. But those girls who are skinny dipping, they each impregnate, which is the 2nd generation. Because really this story is going to be about these girls and their kids. The kids who come from the good and the evil. A brother and a sister from one, and then a brother from the other. Or a boy from the other. So that's the story set up. And eventually it somehow comes to pass that the good son ends up getting with Jaffe's daughter, which makes the evil brother, kind of go mad. And he pretty much seeks out this power too. So that's the story as we move ahead here. And again, Gabriel Rodriguez's art is just really good. I believe he is a former architect. So all of his backgrounds and stuff are kind of flawless in a way that would make one jealous. He's just very precise with what he does. Like this mansion house that he drew. I'm moving fast because I filmed this video and of course the audio didn't work. So something I also took from him is how he is happy to cast his faces in black, but just leave whites of the eyes and teeth. Like that. Even that. It's so good that I used it for a drawing myself. I skip way ahead here, where Jaffe starts pulling the nightmare creatures out from Quiddity to unleash them on the world. There's also a couple other people who are involved, which are some journalists who go to investigate the earthquakes and like the disappearing people. Here's more of those monsters. I am always surprised with Clive Barker stuff that is not more popular. And I realize that I am a fan, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is, but I don't know. His stuff is so ripe for visual art, whether that's film or graphic novels, that I'm surprised it's not gone to more. Also, there's not that many splash pages in this book, which I really like. When you read like a superhero book, they are everywhere. But here, the storytelling really takes front and center stage, as you got to move through a very large novel. This drawing is great, though. They got a Dutch angle here. vanishing point for this roof is down here. The perspective, the Dutch angle is probably something like this, maybe. Because we're above this character, which is the boy, that the good son, and he has creatures latching onto him from Jaffe. Yeah, again, more of these dark faces, which I think is kind of a lost art in today's books a lot of times, is people's commitment to black. A lot of it seems to be more line art that is just centered around the colorist filling in. But I really like the concept of ink still, the idea that ink is like the blackest thing we can make, and you might as well use that if you're inking. Because these images, particularly the ones that are pages where there's heavy blacks, will always work out. Like they don't need colors. If you looked at some of these pages that have lots of blacks, here's more architecture stuff that he's just so good at. Another Dutch angle. They would look good. Like they exist without color and look great. Sorry, again, I know I'm blazing through this, but I'm trying to keep it short. Nice defleshed face here from flesh down to bone. This is the evil son, who is trying to take up his father's quest to unleash this nightmare realm on them and the world. One thing I don't really care for is the blurring of drawings, like the computerized blurring. Like this is very clearly a replicated panel, which is fine. But then they blur the background, and this happens somewhat frequently throughout the book. And I don't think it adds a whole lot. I understand what they're trying to do, like shift the perspective or focus a little bit to be real. Like again, there's a blur right there, like a motion blur. I still think if you really wanted to, you could add speed lines or something like that. Yeah, look at how good he draws the car. And this smoke here is great. There's a lot to learn from that. And the trees. You see, this is a drawing that has the illusion of speed because there's some marks coming off the trees here horizontally towards a vanishing point. And you don't need the blur. I think that is the way to do it. I think the blur can almost be considered, I don't want to say lazy, but it's like maybe it was a new tool for them at the time and they're just like, let's use that. And I don't think it looks as good. These right here, these shadow creatures following the evil son, and the way he draws those streaks, again, great. Huge sense of motion. More of that pouring out of this building they flow into. It's really good stuff. More cars. And then here's where we start getting the heavy blacks, where you just know these pages in black and white look great. Try and skip over the name. More blurring. I know there's blurring here. Like they're trying to switch the focus to the tentacles as opposed to the people being attacked by them, but I don't know. Does it add anything? I don't think so. More blurring. Some of the effects, like this is great. These dark faces where only eyes and teeth remain. So good. I plan on using that an awful lot in how I draw moving forward. There's quite a bit of nudity. This is not necessarily a young person read. Very adult story. So I think if you know who Clive Barker is, you already know that's a foregone conclusion. Anyhow, the novel, I believe, is far more foul, based on my memory, and more wretched and putrid, and just kind of, make you cringe a little bit sometimes when you're reading it. Another page, it's like mostly black. I bet that just looks great in black and white. They put the sort of green filter over it, which, again, is what it is. I think it'd look better just as pure black instead of the green filter through the black, but more dark. Eyes, teeth. That motif works really well. So the creatures that the dreamers, the good people summon, tend to look a lot more like superheroes and things like that. And this guy right here, the superhero, he has CB on his chest. And that's pretty much how Clive Barker looked in his mid-40s, probably, when he was a pretty fit, muscular dude. He's had some health problems, of course, some ones that were unexpected. So, hopefully he is able to continue doing some good work. But I think it's kind of cool. He looks like a superhero there. More of the motion. Awesome car. I can't draw cars at all, so that's always going to get a lot of praise from me. And his architectural background gives his buildings a lot of variety and believability. Like, I find when I'm drawing something, I have to really, I'm not a designer, so when I'm doing that, I'm just so compromised. I'm so far behind the 8-ball in all facets, not only trying to figure out how to draw it, but then design it so it looks cool and all this stuff. And you can just tell his is just so clean and good. Here we start to see exactly how proportionally strange his characters are. I thought there was going to be a more clear example, but they're pretty short-armed. Their forearms are not really much longer than their biceps, which, when I draw, the way I look at it is like your forearm to wrist, is about the same distance as like your bicep to about halfway up your shoulder. So if you just take into account the bicep to elbow joint, like that is where it reaches on me, is to about here. And so I just add like another 15% or whatever when I'm doing my proportions. Forearms are longer. But he doesn't really do that. They're kind of like 1-to-1. And I still think it looks cool though. Like, it's obviously done with intention. Yeah, look at his pretty short forearm there. And then he does the hand normal size. So it ends up looking like giant hands, which I think looks cool. And the heads end up looking really large on these squattier characters. Again, I think cool. He generally isn't doing 3 heads wide for shoulders. So here the characters have gone into the dream world and are floating through the sea, which is sort of corrupting them and changing them. So that's the dilemma they're faced with. And then they kind of have to call upon Jaffe, the evil dude, to try and close this gateway that is letting these monsters spill forth into the world. So they go and search for him down in the caves below where they crash landed all those years ago. More of the heavy shadows on the face. Pure silhouettes there, which look great. And he does do his best to try and help. Again, look at the gestures, how big the eyes are on the characters. Even the girl has big eyes, but his are ginormous. And it looks so cool to me. Here we go. Here's a good example of his proportions. Really giant head, and then look at that. His head is that big, and it's pretty much the same size from shoulder to belly button, which your head is supposed to be about to your chest, 8 heads tall. But yeah, he just has these funky proportions, and he makes it work. So here's the portal that they're all spilling out of. Jaffe's trying to close it, Great pillar smoke cloud, which the atom bomb location in real life does tie into the story, which is pretty cool. Trinity, I believe. Is that what it's called? I don't know. Like I said, I think it's really worth reading. If you're a Clive Barker fan at all, then it definitely is. There's also the implication that the story will go on this is the end of the first book of the art. And I don't know that, so that is what the series is called for Clive Barker's books. And I think he's written 2 out of 3. I don't know if there's ever going to be another graphic novel that continues on with this. So, you know, I like it. I wish there was more. Here's some of the covers back here, which the first one relates pretty closely to the novel's cover. All these, of course, make really good sense to the stories. Like I said, there's Clive Barker right there. It's kind of a transformer. It'd be kind of a fun thing to figure out who they were basing all these off of, in a way. The heroic characters. And then here's some Clive Barker key art that is supposed to help. Variant covers, I suppose, actually. But anyways, that is The Great and Secret Show. There's also another story at the back here called Seduth. I don't really remember it, to be honest. But a really cool addition to a very cool story. If you just wanted to see more, like a more popular Gabriel Rodriguez book, he also did Lock and Key, which I'm reading now, and it's really good. Ironically, it is written by Stephen King's son, which Stephen King had once said that Clive Barker was the future of horror. So there's this weird little triangle or thing going on. It's got to be pretty cool for Gabriel Rodriguez, since he seems to do a lot of horror art, to have worked for both Clive Barker and Stephen King adjacent stuff. So I know I would be psyched if that was me. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.